Honestly, at this point, America is a joke when it comes to our governments. Our Senate is a disaster. Our House is a disaster. Washington, D.C. is a disaster. And I'll give you an example of this. We still, for whatever reason, just cannot seem to get DHS funded. The nonsense that we saw over the weekend, or kind of going into the weekend, I think really perfectly makes the case of this. So here is the headline that came out, I believe, on Friday. Yeah, Friday. House Republicans pass a DHS funding bill that Democrats called dead on arrival in the Senate. And this is what just keeps happening. Back and forth, back and forth. The House will pass something, and the Senate will kill it. And the Senate will pass something, and the House will kill it. And then back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The fault for this is on the voters, to a certain extent, because we have given the GOP an unworkable majority that's built primarily on the squishiest Republicans imaginable. And this is in the House and Senate. We have maybe 2 to 3 votes majority in both chambers, which is enough to say, oh, I have the majority, but it's not enough to actually do anything. And then on top of that, the key figures, when you're in 1 or 2 vote margins on key legislation, will flip on you. When you've got 2 Republicans that you really need to vote for you, and you've got maybe a 50% shot of getting their vote, you have no majority. So digging into the article, and again, this is NBC News, so let it never be said that I only use right-wing sources. Here is NBC News. They're as left as you can be. House Republicans voted Friday evening to pass a short-term funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security that has no viable path in the Senate and is likely to extend the government shutdown or the government stalemate on Capitol Hill. The vote of 213 to 203 came after Speaker Mike Johnson rejected the Senate-passed bill. Now, this is what I want to get into, is this Senate-passed bill. This is insane. Here's the separate article about the Senate-passed bill. Senate agrees to fund DHS except for ICE and CBP in a bid to end extreme airport delays. Now, I've made this point before. Why are we, as Republicans, expected to accept the fact that there are some federal employees that shouldn't be paid for their job? The answer is no. If you don't want ICE and CBP to exist, start just pushing for that. You don't get to say, we're just not going to pay these people and fund these agencies that Congress has already created. If you don't like them, campaign and lobby against their existence. But don't just say, we're not going to fund that. That's childish. The Senate agreed unanimously early Friday to fund the Department of Homeland Security, but without funding for immigration enforcement and deportations. Senators approved the package at 2:20 in the morning by voice vote following a marathon session. At 2 a.m., they tried to ram this package through the Senate. They hoped you wouldn't ask. They hoped you wouldn't notice. They'll just power it through. 2:20 in the morning, when no one is awake. It gets worse, believe it or not. The Senate advances DHS funding bill with only 5 senators present. There were only 5 people in the room at 2:20 in the morning on Friday morning when they passed this ridiculous funding bill. How does that happen? How do we keep hearing from the Republicans that we can't pass the SAVE Act because we don't have 60 votes when they're passing crap at 5 in the morning with 5 people in the room? This should piss you off. This should piss every one of us off, because it's making it clear that the uniparty in the Senate, it's not that they can't get things done. They don't want to get things done. And this is why I've reached the point where we just need to say screw it and abolish the filibuster. I've been kind of cautious on that in the past, because I know that that's opening up a dangerous door. But J.D. Vance did a good job of making the point that the Democrats will do this to us next time they get a chance. Take a listen to this.
What's your word to the senators here? What would you like to see happen? Are you available to cast the deciding vote to pass the SAVE Act?
Absolutely. I am available whenever they would like to pass it. The problem is we actually do not have 50 senators, not who would vote for the SAVE Act, but who would overrule the filibuster. That's something that a majority of the Senate, you need 50 senators plus me, and I'm certainly on board, 50 senators to actually overrule this archaic rule and pass the Save America Act. Now here, Benny, this is the thing that I find so absurd about this. If you remember, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, two people I didn't always agree with politically, moderate Democrats, but very good people. They are the people who saved the filibuster when the Democrats were in control of the Senate just a couple of years ago. What happened to them? They were tarred and feathered by the far left. They were ran out of town. So when Mitch McConnell and Lisa Murkowski say, well, we need to protect the filibuster because the Democrats, they're not going to do it, so we shouldn't do it either. The Democrats ruined the career of Kyrsten Sinema for not overruling the filibuster. They're going to do it. So we might as well do it now to enforce the protection of the American electoral system. It's the dumbest political argument I've ever seen. I promise you, Benny, I would bet.
And essentially what he's saying is, if we don't do it now, they're going to do it to us. And I think he's right. At this point, we just have to get things done. We don't have the option of being cautious anymore.